President Trump has signed a pair of anti-sex trafficking bills into law. The legislation, which received unanimous bipartisan support, intends to hold accountable websites that profit from advertising sexual services from adults and children forced into sex work against their will. Prior to the bill signing, Craigslist took down its personal section, and the website Backpage.com was removed by the FBI. But a growing number of advocates who dedicate their work to fighting sex trafficking claim that the legislation is misguided and runs the risk of actually making sex work less safe. Among those, activist Kate D'Adamo, who I'm pleased to welcome to the show now. Kate, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. To get your perspective on this, here's legislation passed overwhelmingly, bipartisan support. We rarely say that about much coming out of Washington nowadays. And I suspect people would say, how could anybody say that these are not good pieces of legislation, that rather than protecting people they're designed to protect, they could actually be harmful to some people? So explain to us, if you would, why you're opposed to this legislation, why you think it's problematic.
Sure. And, this is really one of those instances where the intention of a bill and the impact of a bill are so vastly different. And so, the intention of the bill is to be able to hold third parties accountable when they knowingly facilitate trafficking. And the problem was that
that's laudable. I'm sure that just about everybody's saying that that's a good intention, correct?
Sure. If you knowingly facilitate the exploitation of another person through force, fraud, or coercion, you should absolutely be held accountable for that. The question is what form the implementation of the law takes. And the way the law was written was not actually to kind of take a scalpel and try to determine what that looks like, but to simply expand liability with a lot of terminology that actually isn't defined in law. And so what this law did was create this brand new civil liability and not really define what it looks like. And so what you're asking is for all of these different websites to all of a sudden make a decision about whether or not they had the litigation budget to sustain not just one, but 51 different government lawsuits. Let me prove that they were not knowingly facilitated.
Yeah, let me jump in for a second, because I know that you said that some of these websites you feel actually have a value in terms of safety and protection of sex workers. Explain why it is then. Again, let's use your term disconnect. A lot of people will think, oh my gosh, these websites are horrible. They're preying on people. And yet you say they have a value, a safety value. How can that be?
Absolutely. The ability to advertise online really created the opportunity for people that were trading sex to screen clients for the first time, to implement the harm reduction strategies that I used to teach and that people are still teaching.
Rather than on a street corner, essentially, yes?
Rather than on a street corner, if someone doesn't want to work in a brothel or someone doesn't want to work for a third party, having access to a website platform means that they can stay safe and they can do it on their own. And, there's a study that came out, it's still going through peer review, that said that the opening of Craigslist erotic services section was correlated to a 17% drop in female homicides overall, not just sex workers, female homicides overall. And when you talk to the authors, they said, there's a lot of different pieces of this, but ultimately people in the sex trade make up such a large percentage of female homicide victims that having access to safety and to screening techniques, the ability to keep yourself safe, to meet someone in a designated place that you have more control over, to be able to determine if you want someone to come with you. All of those things are removed if you can't advertise online. And so this didn't take away trafficking. It didn't take away sex work. It simply forced people who are already working in the sex trade to have fewer options and to have more unsafe options.
I know one of the things that you plan on doing, Kate, is engaging in a lobbying effort, visiting legislators. What will you be saying to them in terms of what they can do, sort of a two-track approach, if you would? One is to certainly make sure we're protecting against forced involvement in sex work, but at the same time protecting those sex workers who you just described to us now. What should legislators be doing?
So first and foremost, the ask is we need to consider the collateral damage of these laws. We need to consider how these actually work on the ground and whether or not they are actually achieving the goals that we set out. So the very first thing is accountability. The second thing is not from here on out really actually talking to people who are impacted by these laws. And, that's really true across the board in a lot of different ways. When there's a farm bill that's going through right now that actually cuts SNAP benefits. And the impact of that is that more people are likely to be forced into underground economies to do what they have to do to survive. And so, are you bringing in people who are reliant on SNAP benefits to testify about what happens with this bill? And so for trafficking bills, for bills that impact people that trade sex, are you bringing in the people who have to live under this law to say, this is going to make me safer and this is going to make my life better?
Well, Kate, this has been a very interesting and revealing, provocative conversation and an informative conversation. So we appreciate you taking some time to talk with us, and perhaps we can chat again down the road a bit and see what sort of progress is being made. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to talk about progress.
All right. You be well.